Hello, y'all. How is everyone doing? I'm your host, Nicole Mendes. This is Diamond in the South, and welcome to the pod. We have another action-packed week ahead of us, a really, really big matchup going on, but let's talk about some midweeks. Let's talk about last week. Let's talk about who we have here on the pod this week for our interview. It is jam-packed. I can't wait to dive into it with y'all. But before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe to Diamond in the South on Softball America Networks. Like, comment, subscribe, all of the things. You can follow me on all the socials, Nicole_Mendes __ on Instagram and Twitter. Just make sure you go check us out. It is a wild, wild world that is Softball America. Another podcast I host called The Dirt. We just recorded that last night live. If you haven't seen it, make sure you go check it out. A lot of Olive Garden, a lot of laughs, a little bit of delusion, and quite a few super chats. So it was a good time. It was a good time. But before we get too distracted into what are the matchups, let's break down what's been going around in the world of softball right now. I just want to preview. There's a huge, huge, huge matchup coming up this weekend, and that is Texas versus Florida. It's going to be at Florida, and this one is something that I am just so excited to be able to watch. But today I have joining us is Teagan Kavan. She's a sophomore right-hander from Texas, and she is the SEC Pitcher of the Week. Texas has been rolling, but I mean, thank you so much for coming on. I can't wait to see what you guys do this weekend. I'm a big fan of you. Got to meet you last fall, and I think that's the first time I've ever been to Texas and really explored the campus, the field, all of that. So I had a blast. How are you this morning?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good. Of
Yeah,
course.
doing
Of
well.
course. So as we get going, conference is finally underway. I think I love the rush of preseason, but
Mhm.
whenever it gets into conference, it's like, okay, I now can have a routine. I know I'm not going to be
Mhm.
scrambling every week. Like, I'll actually be able to go to my classes. That's kind of nice to be a student. But also the prep becomes a lot easier. Just the workload, the routine, I think, becomes a lot easier. For Texas specifically, tell me a little bit. Obviously, you're in conference, but it's a different conference this year. Has the prep been any different for SEC play than it has been in Big 12 in the past?
I mean, yeah, we had a quick turnaround coming back on Monday, and so Tuesday was like our day off, and so yesterday was kind of our first real like prep day, I guess, for this weekend. But I talked about it yesterday and some of the media stuff that like we respect everybody last year and all the teams we play, but I think it is different, obviously, coming into the SEC, and like I think the level of focus is definitely like higher, and just like I don't know, we know that the competition is going to be tough every single weekend and anyone can take a game from anybody. And so I think it's just like the level of focus and like lock in that we need to have and just intent with our practice and just everything we do.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about that intent because I remember watching y'all's practice and just talking to you and some of your teammates and to Coach White, and that was something that was kind of tossed around. Just being
Mhm.
really intentional, being really focused with what your goals are, whether it's in preseason, off season, and conference. Tell me a little bit about that intent.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot, like, you get out of it what you put into it, and so and, like, the way you do everything is the way you do anything or vice versa, but, I think that's a cool thing that we're trying to kinda live by and something I try to live by, and so just knowing that, like, trusting our preparation and if as long as our preparation is kinda good, that, like, we can go into the games and be confident and kinda not, take some pressure off of us as long as we've prepared well and are intentional in what we do, 'cause I think that's the most important thing, like, going through the motions isn't going to get you anywhere. And so just being
Mhm.
thoughtful with what we're doing and going into a conference obviously is it's easier to be focused on one team versus like five. And so that will help.
It's a little bit easier,
Yeah,
right? The prep at least.
yeah,
Talk to me about that prep. So last year you came in and you absolutely dominated. You're great as a freshman.
thank you.
Um, and you're welcome. And with that though, there's that this is my first time. Like I don't really know what to expect, and I'm going with it. You adapt really well whenever you're a freshman because you're like,
Mhm,
this is all new, right?
yeah,
Second time through, you kind of know, all right, what my body's going to have to go through, how to prep for these teams. But whenever you deep dive into conference and just take me through, and we don't have to get into Florida, but just a generic lineup of I'm going to go prep through this lineup. I'm going to star my girls. I'm going to look for this. Like, what is your approach whenever you're looking at a lineup?
yeah, definitely, I think it's different this year, like you said, having more experience and stuff, and I think there is kinda something with, like, not kinda knowing what's to come,
Yeah.
and sometimes that makes it, like, a little easier, but at the same time, I'm, like, grateful for the experience, and I think it's helped me a lot, coming into this year. But, yeah, I've been trying to work on, like, when I'm scouting myself, obviously going through their hitters and, looking at what they do well, but also, like, trying to think about what I do well and focus on, like, kinda my strengths, and I think some of the times that I scout and I try to look at, like, all the things that they're doing well, it, hurts kinda my confidence a little bit and knowing that, like,
Yeah.
no, I do things well too, and, like, I have things that can beat them, and so focusing on, like, my strengths and not just their strengths, I feel like is what helps me the most when I'm, like, going through my scout, and then I think talking with, like, Coach PR and Coach White, they have, like, they do their scouts too, and so they have so many
Yeah.
good insights, and we kinda share what we see, and then I think this year as a pitching staff, we're gonna try to, like, come together more, and just talk about it as a whole, especially, like, in the during the weekend.
Mhm. Well, that's so big, especially throughout the weekend, as you have your plan, so does the other team, and they change and adapt. And if you're on plan, that's great. But
Mhm.
if something you want to fix it, coming together like in the middle of the weekend and talking about it, I
Yeah.
think that's huge. It just shows you adjust. You have to be able to adapt.
Mhm.
Um, One of the things though that you kind of talked about was it was a great experience. You are not in that position though anymore. You know what's coming. You're more of a leadership role and you've settled into it. We kind of talked about that a bit in the fall of I was that freshman last year and now I'm
Mhm.
seeing the freshman and it's different. I think that's something that we see a lot around the country this year of the COVID seniors, they're gone, and there's a lot of new faces. I feel like Texas, y'all kind of experienced that last year. You still had a couple of COVID seniors, but there wasn't as many, I feel like, as a lot of the other teams. Um, Talk to me a little bit about just taking that momentum from last year and kind of running with it this year. You guys have been on an absolute tear.
Yeah, I think yeah, last year we were younger than we are this year, I think technically on, like, numbers and stuff, but I think I don't know, I think, like, we have a lot of experience coming in this year from last year, and so, like,
Yeah.
using that to our advantage, and we have I think this team gets along super well, and so just, like, using that, pushing us we know how far we got, we know how, like, fun it is, and we know that, like, obviously, that wasn't the result we wanted, and so,
Yeah.
um, kinda just, like, remembering that, but also, like, focusing on doing the little things right, and knowing that, like, there's a reason that we didn't, like, finish, like, on top last year, and so there's, like, things that we need to get better at, and, like, kind of, like, nothing's ever, like, good enough, like, keep getting better, but using that and using that confidence that we have as a team and working together and bringing the new people along with us that have been really beneficial to us, and kinda showing them the ropes, and since they haven't got, like, a taste of what we got last year, just, like, kinda showing them through that and showing them that, like, we can do this again if we do all these things right.
Yeah. That's something that's hard though, because
Mhm,
we've both been in that experience of you know what it takes and you know how good you have to be and what you have to do. And whenever you have somebody come in and you see that potential, you're like, yes, let's go. But
mhm.
they also don't quite know yet. And so being able to describe and prepare them and help them get ready, what has that been like?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I've been talking to Cam, like, before we started a little bit too, just, like, pitcher wise, and I talked to Sit Lolly, like, my freshman year a lot just about what to expect, and I think me and Cam have very different personalities, and so, like, she's just, like, she's very, like, calm and, like, collected, doesn't really show it. I mean, I feel like I'm calm on the mound, but, like, outside of it, I'm, like, trying to figure things out for myself and, like, talk to as many people as I can to be, like, prepared, and I feel like I know she just has, like, a confidence about her that, like, sometimes I feel like I'm like, "Dang, she's got this," like, um, but, still try to help her out, but I think it's just more of the fact that, like, especially when we started it, like, I think all it takes is, like, a moment in a game or a moment in even a practice or just, like, something that shows you, like, "Oh, dang, like, I can do this." Like, I feel like
Mhm.
that's what it was for me, and that was, like, in my first game, I was like, "Okay, wow, like, I can hang. Like, I can do this, and I'm, like, just as good as all these other people." So I think that's what it takes for, like, our, like, newcomers and everything, just for, like, a little glimmer of, like, "Oh, yeah, I can hang, and, like, I'm just as good as everybody else," and, like, I see, like, kinda what they're talking about, and, like, I see why I'm, like, on this team and, like, a part of it. So
Yeah. We'll lighten it up a little bit, but I was stalking your social media. I was stalking Texas social media, and I remembered I forgot about it, but I remembered I saw this a while ago, and I was like, "This I don't think I've ever seen this." You guys had a kangaroo? Is the
Yeah,
kangaroo still there? It was at practice. I mean, I saw it everywhere. Like, how did it get there? Whose is it? Is it
yeah.
still like where is this kangaroo?
Yeah, so it's Reese's brothers, but I guess it's, like, her I guess we, like, said it was Reese's and, like, it was I thought it was gonna be, but I guess it's her brothers now, he's, like, living with, her brother on he lives on, like, a ranch, and so it's Betty Rue is her and it's his, but she came to our game so she was with us for, like, a couple weeks when we came back, and that's where all, like, the social media stuff was, and then when we started season, she, like, went with her brother because it wasn't fair to her, to
Yeah.
not have
Poor
the
Betty
attention.
Rue, right.
Yeah, exactly. But she came our last home, like, tournament, and she was, like, in the outfield, and they kept holding her up. It was so funny. It's so weird. I mean, obviously, I've, like, never been around, like, just a kangaroo, not many people
Not
have.
really?
No,
No?
yeah,
You haven't?
but but she's so cute. She's so soft, and she's almost like a little dog, like, she just wants to be, like, cuddled and held, which is so, like, weird to me, but it was cool. I'm definitely, like, definitely a story I could tell forever.
You're a kangaroo girl now, I
Yeah,
guess.
yes.
And there was I just saw this in the fall whenever you guys did this. You did a multi-sport challenge. So y'all did basketball, you did sand volleyball. I think I saw some swimming. Like there was a whole variation and mix of things. I always wanted to try out other sports. My one of my roommates was a gymnast.
Mhm.
Um, and I did not try out gymnastics. Coach wouldn't let me. But how fun was that to be able to kind of experience all those other different sports in the fall? Like, did anything translate? Were you surprisingly good at anything? How was that?
It's so fun. I think it's really fun to see it's the first thing we do when we come back, and so it's cool to, like, see everybody, like, off the field before, like, on the field, and, it's fun to see, like, obviously the personalities we have, but also just, like, how athletic some of us are, and, like, I'm like, "Dang, you might have been able to go D1 for, like, another sport, like, this is crazy." But I think for me, I really like the beach volleyball we did, except 'cause growing up, I, like, wish I would have, like, tried volleyball, I never tried it,
Me neither.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I just don't have the hops for that, so I think you could, like, fit the credit card underneath, like, when I was trying to, like, spike the ball. So, that was and basketball is fun. I played basketball a little bit growing up, so, like, that was fun for me too, but I think it's
Yeah.
more of the, like I don't know, and we're also competitive, so, like, everything's, like, fun, and so it just gets really intense, but also, like, it's kinda fun to see, like, how good we are in, like, other aspects too, so it's fun, and
Yeah.
it's fun to see also who works well together and stuff because
Mhm.
we're put on, like our teams were, like, 5 girls or yeah, it would have been this year with only, like, 21, it's like 5 and 6, and so,
Mhm.
yeah, it was fun to see, like, just, like, personalities mesh and, like, see how people worked well together.
Mhm. Who is the most competitive?
Oh, uh Ashton's really I have to say Ashton, she's super competitive, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
sh
There's always one where you're like, "Ooh, I don't wanna get in her way."
yeah. We're all, like, there, and then Ashton's just, like, a
Just a
tick,
little
yeah,
just a tick.
yeah,
I noticed that you had "Let It Fly" written on your glove.
yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so my mom, she was my first pitching coach, and then I got to an age where I wouldn't listen to her anymore, and so but she started me with pitching, and so, she's just always been, like, there for me and, like, my rock, and she always just, like, she has experienced it. She was a pitcher too, and she pitched, for Drake in Des Moines, and so
Mhm.
she just knows what it's like and what it takes, and she just always has said that to me growing up, just, like, when you go out there, it's, like, not mechanical anymore. It's just, like, go out there, and she always says, like, "Let it fly one sev," and so just wanted that reminder to just, like, when I'm out there, like, and feel like I'm on an island, just that, like, I'm prepared and I, like, know what to do, and I just have to relax and, like, do my thing.
Yeah, I love it. Do you ever look at it in game to, like, remind yourself, or do you just tell it to yourself?
I do look at it sometimes I hear her say it too, and so that helps, but she's the best. My parents, they come to nearly every game, and so
Yeah.
it's cool being far from home that they're able to come, so I look at it, but sometimes I even hear her say it.
Yeah. Hey, I'm convinced there's, like, people in college and they'll go like, "Yeah, I hear my dad's whistle or, like, my
Mhm,
mom's voice." Like, you are so tuned into that, that even if
mhm,
you're not even trying, you just it
yeah,
catches your eye, yeah. I love it. Okay, last 2, 3 questions. This is more softball IQ, softball strategy. Obviously, I love getting to know about the team. I love getting to know about you, but I also just I love getting into the whys of softball, the IQ side,
mhm,
and I feel like that's something that, man, it's whenever you get to talk about it at a high level with somebody like yourself, it's so fun and you can learn so much about the game.
mhm,
So I think for me, one of the things that I think we're seeing is whenever you get through the second and third time through the lineup, we're starting to see a lot more pitch by committee. And because of all the data and the video and the scouts, it makes it skew. If you can say that, skew a little bit more towards the batter whenever you
mhm,
get there. They've seen you, they know what you have, they've done their scout. It's hard to keep them on their toes and surprise. So if you're not pitching by committee and you're staying in that game and you're continuing to go, what has been the biggest thing? Because yes, you have to change, but am I changing up my pitches? Am I going back to something I did back in the first inning? Like, what's the IQ
mhm.
behind that?
Yeah, I think we talk, with between each inning with, Coach PR too and kinda overview, the batters that we're gonna see in the next inning, and I think we try to, like, kinda, like if I need to show everything right away, like, I can show everything if that's what it's gonna take that day, but if there's things that I can kinda, like, keep in my back pocket and, like, use later in the game to combat hitters, I think that sometimes that's the plan, and, like, some teams that's not gonna be the case and gonna need everything right away. I think it really matters with, like, how many pitches they saw too. Obviously, if they've only seen, like, a couple in their first few at bats, like, there's probably more room to work with, but if they've had, like, longer counts and everything, like, going through, I think it does get a little harder. I think, like, changing speeds never hurts because obviously that's yeah, it's
Never
a
hurts.
fun yeah, I think, like, at the end of the day, like, it's if you have a good changeup, like, it's hard to even, like, get ready for that, even if you've seen it multiple times, but I think for me going through games, I think sometimes I get, like, caught up in trying to do too much, and I think going through the, like, 3rd and 4th time through the lineup, it's like, "Okay, like, I'm 1 pitch away from an out, like, I really need 1 pitch for them to pop it up or 1 pitch for them to ground it down and roll over or
Mm,
something." So I think it's, like, kind of almost flipping my mindset and, like, realizing that, like, "Okay, I don't need to, like, do so much." Like, if I can,
yeah.
like, spin the ball well on, like, hit my location well on 1 pitch for them to miss-hit it, it'll get them out, and so, I think just, like, going through, just, like, try not to exert so much. I mean, like, the whole game, but just, like, being smart about and efficient with what we're doing and, um, mixing it up. I think we're not afraid that if something's working to, like, keep hammering that, um,
Mhm.
if it's like, why fix it or if it's not broke, why fix it?
Yeah.
I think we're not, like, afraid to, like, continue doing that, um, but I don't know, it's kinda like trial and error, see what works, but I think definitely this year I feel like I've I feel like in a few games where now feel like I've been through that point of the lineup, and I think it's helped me, like, experience-wise too, that, like, just, like, feeling out what I need to do and, like, the mindset I need to have when they come up for the 3rd and 4th time.
What is that mindset?
I think it goes back to, like, try not to do too much. I think a lot of
Yeah.
times I get in this, like especially being, like, a rise ball pitcher most of the time, it's like, "Oh, I like statistically, like, rise ball pitchers can put up more strikeout numbers," and it's like, "Okay, like, that really doesn't matter at the end of the day." Like, the end of the day, what matters is, like, the win, and so, like, not trying to do too much and realize that, like, as long as I keep my team in the game, like, honestly, I wanna have less, more efficient innings because it's the longer I can go, and so I think sometimes when I get caught up with, like, trying to do a lot and, like, maybe, like, it's not strike people out, but, like, yeah, it's fun to get that, and then when I try to,
Mhm.
like, just do too much, it's more torque on my body and, like, is the less I can go, like, longer in the game, so I think it's just trying to, like, slow down, not get too, like, sped up, and just take it pitch by pitch, especially just being, like, I'm intentional the whole game, but especially when it
Mhm.
gets, like, towards the end, and, normally it's probably as we're going forward gonna be pretty tight games at the end, and so
Yeah.
just, like, being really intentional about each pitch towards the end.
Yeah, I love that, because whenever you're going and it's like, okay, I could get a swing and miss, I could miss a barrel here, I could get a
Mhm.
strikeout, but I could also, if I place this pitch at this location, I could
Mhm.
get a pop up in
Yeah.
one pitch instead of three or four, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to do
Exactly.
the setup pitch, I don't have to do all that. And I think sometimes it is so enticing, right? Because you're
Mhm.
you're gonna get your strikeouts, like you've already gotten your strikeouts this year, but to be able to be efficient in the
Mhm.
circle. I was talking with some of the pro softball players and some of those pitchers, and a lot of them are playing in Japan, they're playing in Mexico, they're playing with Athletes Unlimited. And I was asking him, what's the biggest difference from college to pro? Because there is like a little bit of a difference jump.
Mhm.
The strategy gets really different. And the biggest thing that they were saying is you have to become a pitcher. You can't be a thrower. And
Mhm.
whenever I think of that, I think of the thrower as like, all right, here's a sign. I know
Yeah.
I'm going for this, or I'm just trying to throw it as hard as I can, or just hit that location
Mhm.
and like that's it. Instead of a pitcher, there's a little bit more thought behind it. You're not overthinking on the mound, but there's that intentionality, there's the efficiency of, all right, I'm pitching this game, I'm in control of this game. I think there's like a
Mhm.
commands level to it. Do you think you've seen a growth in yourself from last year to this year as far as throwing versus pitching and that level of efficiency?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. I feel me and my mom talk about, like, pitching versus, like, throwing all the time, and, like, I definitely there's games where I feel like I am just, like, being a thrower and that, like, I feel like even if those games are, like, successful for me, I still, like I feel like I'm more upset about those games than, like, other games where I
Mhm.
feel like I'm, like, in command of what I'm doing. Like, there was a game a few weeks ago where, like, I had a good game, like, on paper and on stats, but, like, there were certain parts of the game where I just, like, could have taken control of or, like, could have,
Mhm.
like, thrown the pitch that I, like, fully wanted to pitch and, like, fully committed to it, and, like, I don't know, those games, like, bother me more because 'cause I'm like, this is my game to, like this is my game I'm pitching in, my game to win and, like, for my team, and I I don't know, I can't just always like, I can't take a pitch off, and so I feel like that's what it feels like when I'm, like, being a thrower and just trying to, like, get the job done that way or push harder. I feel like when I get in tough spots, sometimes I just tend to, like, just try to push harder, and that's when it's, like, being a thrower. So it's, like,
Mm.
taking a step back and being like, "Okay, no, like, you're in control, like, make a good pitch, think about what you're doing," yeah, I think during those times, that's when I get, like, frustrated at myself, because I definitely do experience that, and I think it is when I'm, like, in a tough spot and I'm just trying to, like, push through instead of, like,
Mhm.
taking a step back and, like, working through it instead of just, like, pushing through it.
Last question, because you have been phenomenal and I could ask you a million more. But whenever that does happen in game, who is it, you that checks yourself? Is it your catcher? Is it somebody on the infield? Is it a coach? Like, is there somebody that kind of notices with that with you and goes like, okay, like, hey, like, let's do that? Or are you still kind of trying to find that rhythm?
Yeah, I think it is me a little bit. I think it is, like, Coach PR a little bit too. I think
Mhm.
she's really well, like, reading what I'm doing and, like, can
Mhm.
kinda tell too. Obviously, we spend a lot of time together, and so I think it's a combination of both, and sometimes, like, Reese, when she's catching me, she's like, "Bro, you just need to, like, calm, like, down." Like
Bro,
yeah.
chill.
I don't think she'd say that. She'd probably be annoyed if I said that she said "bro," but, um, no, but just, like, take a step back and, like, I'm, like, fine. It's like we're in a fine spot and just, like,
Mhm.
know that I'm, like, she trusts me and, like, my
Yeah.
coaches trust me and the whole team trusts me, and so I think that helps too, is just, like, looking around at my team and knowing that, like, they all trust me to get an out in this situation, and, like, I also trust them to, like, field the ball if it comes to them and get the out, and so but, yeah, I think just, like, checking myself and through Coach PR does a really good job, I'll say, of, like, for example, in the Arizona game when we go up 3-0 and then I lose it within the first 3 batters and we're back to 0-0 ball game, essentially at 3-3, like, she comes out there and she's, like, just so calm, and, like, that really helps me, like, as a pitcher. She just comes out there and it's just like, "Alright, like, 0-0 ball game, like, this is what you want." And so, I'm like, "Heck yeah. Yeah, I guess this is what I want today."
Sure.
Yeah. So she just does a really good job of, like, n I she helps me, like, feed off of her when she's just, like, calm in those situations, even though if she's not calm inside, like, she's calm on the outside, and so it really helps me to, like, continue on in the game and, like, not stress about it.
Yeah. Man, well, I love that. Just don't don't try to do too much, right?
Yeah.
Just
Mhm.
let it rip, let it fly,
Yeah,
like, let's
let it
go,
fly.
right? Yeah, and that's why you're one of the best. So I really appreciate you sharing your insight, like the IQ, and just getting to let you talk about who you are, because I think that's something that softball, there's so many great athletes, but there's so many just interesting people. So
Mhm.
thank you for sharing a little bit. Good luck this weekend. It is going to be a fun one. I'm going to be glued to my TV. I'm going to be watching as I'm scurrying around, but that is definitely something I have to carve out time for these games
Yeah,
because they're going to be good.
it will
So
be
thank
fun.
you so much. Yeah,
Yes, thank you, thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
you too. Oh man. I just think that having that level of awareness is so hard to get to, especially as a pitcher. You have the ball every single pitch, and there's always noise and distraction, and this batter and this umpire, and there's so much going on to be able to drown out that noise, figure out what pitch you're throwing, trust that pitch, but also go like, all right, like I want to play this game. I want to be efficient through the zone. I want to work on that craft. And I think a lot of that she mentioned early on in the interview of the idea of whenever she came in as a freshman, she's always asking questions. She talked to Sit, she talked to PR, she talked to anybody and everybody, right? And that whenever you're an athlete and you're a player and you're asking questions and you're curious, you're gonna learn. And I don't know why, but sometimes asking questions feels like a no-no of like, oh, like I gotta know it all or I do know it all. Um, but some of the best athletes I know, Jocelyn Allo, I think of her, for example. I got to watch her for several years go up to all the hitters and go, like, what are you thinking in this situation? Like, what made you want to go after that? Talking to the pitching coach, talking to the pitchers, talking to other teams and asking questions, being curious about the game is such a great thing. I think it's such a big indicator of your willingness to grow your IQ, and whenever you have that high IQ, things just become instinct. Whenever you learn those things, you just pick up on little signs, little tells, and a lot of times as a hitter, as a pitcher, they'll be like, "What made you swim?" I don't know, but, like, there was just a feeling, like, I know it's happening. I can't explain why. There's just a gut feeling, and I just know that is softball IQ coming into play. And I just think that Teagan Kavan, she's at that level where that IQ is there. So that was such a fun conversation. I'm a big fan of her. I got to go visit Texas University, go around Austin a little bit, had some really great interviews. Those will be up shortly on South America. So make sure you guys check them out. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe, not just to this podcast, Diamond in the South, but as well as the rest of the podcast in the Softball America Network. Um, please comment. I love interacting with you guys. And I just think that as this conference gets underway this season, this year, we're going to see a lot of parity. We're going to see a lot of upsets. Parity has been, if I had to pick one word for 2025 softball season, parity is definitely there. So many upsets. And that brings me to this midweek. Holy midweek upset. As it was alluded to in our previous podcast, if you haven't watched it, go watch the most recent episode of The Dirt. Diva down. Hashtag diva down. There were a lot of upsets. There's a lot of big wins, but there's a lot of upsets in the SEC this midweek. So South Carolina, they had a phenomenal start. Lost 3 to Oklahoma, 2 heartbreakers. But then they lost that fourth one this midweek, 5-3 against Coastal Carolina. You have Mississippi State. They had a really great showing this weekend against Auburn, and they scored 15 plus runs in three straight games. But then they fell to Middle Tennessee 3-2, and so it's just like there's these things. So Virginia Tech took down Kentucky 2-0. Georgia Tech upset Auburn 5-4. Florida, they grinded out. I will say this. UCF is a really good team. We saw what they did against Arizona, who's another really good team in the Big 12, but Florida had to grind out a little bit, a tough win against UCF. They won 3-0. That is a big credit to Florida and how tough they are. They're consistent, they're relentless. And even whenever you have another good team that's doing all the things right, Florida, they find a way to get even bigger. I think that's their biggest strength is they know how to get big. They know how to go to that next level. And then Tennessee, Alabama, LSU, and Oklahoma, they dominated their midweek matchup. So it was a little bit of chaos there for the SEC in the midweek games. But it's been such a fun time just getting to watch this softball because as Teagan said, and I always say, it's the little things, and you get to see what teams take care of their little things. Are they meticulous with these tiny, tiny little things that win them games, or not as much? Um, Little things are so big, and especially during midweeks, they can almost be like, okay, like we have this one game, but we're really prepping for the weekend. How do I stay locked in? How do I stay focused? And it's all right. I have this game and I can't look too far ahead because I have to handle business here. And if you as an athlete, you as a team, you as a coach are looking too far ahead, you're not able to take care of business, and that's where teams come up. They sneak behind you and they get those big wins. So for SEC, I would say the little things are going to be key, and that's what I watch whenever I watch mid games is, do they take care of that? Are they attention oriented, detail oriented during those games? Coming up this weekend, I am obviously so excited about the Florida and Texas series. It's gonna be just phenomenal. This is a top three matchup. Um, I'm curious for fan reactions. Is Florida unstoppable, or will Texas expose them? I personally I mentioned this on a different podcast, but I think that Texas, they have their team going on. They know what it takes, and especially with their pitching staff, their offense, and just the experience that they created last year coming into this year. I really like them. I do. And as a former OU athlete, OU fans don't come for me because I know you guys are so passionate about OU, and I am too. But I just in this matchup, I really like Texas. But I do think it's anybody's game. Like I said, Florida is the team that knows how to come up. So tell me your hot take. Is Florida unstoppable? Will Texas expose them? Who knows? Also curious, do you guys think South Carolina is a top contender, or did Oklahoma expose a weakness? We know that they are a high run scoring team, but their pitching is where they struggle. Is that an exposure whenever you have the offenses that you do in the SEC? And then postseason depth. I I know it's way too early to be talking about this, but who do you think are going to be the top five teams in the SEC whenever we get to postseason? And why? Please, please, please let me know. I would love that. But my biggest one is, who wins Texas versus Florida? Let me know your predictions. Do we have scores estimates? I don't know. I'm so curious about this. I'm gonna be locked in. My producer Gray made fun of me, so I am running a marathon this weekend. So I will be running on Sunday in LA. And he made fun of me because I said scurrying around, and he's like, scurrying around, aka running a marathon. Yeah, I will be, but you know what? My phone will be out and ready, and I'm gonna be running watching this game unfold because it's gonna be that good. I cannot wait. I think that whenever you get into the nitty gritty of what what softball is about and you get that energy, you get that passion, it just absolutely explodes and takes it to a whole nother level. For me, you look at the athletes that are coming into this matchup, and that's not the only matchup that is going to be just a huge, huge, huge one. There's a lot of really good matchups, top matchups in the SEC around the country, but I like to highlight there are a lot of ranked SEC teams in the top 25. And whenever you get, I've expressed my opinion on this before, but whenever you get past that top 10, it's really hard to go, okay, well, they're 16 and they're 20. Like that everything the margin is like this. There is no room and you're just kind of getting into the fine nitty-gritty details, but it really could be anybody's game. And I think that whenever it gets to that point, like oof, that is what makes it so fun. That's what makes these games, these conference games so much fun to watch is because there's so many SEC teams in the top 25. There's really not much separating them. There's really not much going like, "Oh, they're so much better." Like, it is neck and neck, whenever you watch these conference games, and I love that. So, top teams in the SEC, Florida, they're 26-2. Texas, they're 26-1. LSU is 23-1, and Oklahoma is 22-0. They're the only undefeated team, not just in the SEC, but in the nation. Haven't been tested too much. I loved their offense response whenever they faced South Carolina this past weekend. I wanna see that again and again and again, and they're gonna be challenged whenever they face Arkansas this weekend. That's gonna be another big matchup. You have Oklahoma and Arkansas. Some of the top hitting teams is Texas. They are batting 390 as a team. I mean, just like offensive powers, and guess who's right behind them? Florida with a 387 batting average, and then you have LSU with a 379. I think LSU has been consistent, as they always are during conference, consistently up there performing, having those numbers. With LSU, I want to see can they maintain? Can they maintain the level that they are at instead of dipping a little bit? I would rather them dip mid-conference and then shoot back up than going, going, going and having that crash that they've had the past few years. I think there is so much talent and potential. We saw Danica Coffey, who is again another SEC player of the week for who knows how many times now, but she is fantastic and what a great leader for them. And that is something that I think this team needs. They need that toughness mentality. They can't just rely on their talent alone. As talented as they are, so is everybody else. You have to have a toughness mentality. So I'm curious about that for LSU. But top power teams, Florida leads all of NCAA with 56 home runs. They are just cruising. A lot of power. I'm I'm wanting to know you have Teagan Kavan, you have Sit Lolly. Texas has a really great pitching staff this year, and I think it's a complete staff. You have all these arms that you can go to and you can use, and then they also have arms that maybe might not get the start right away, but they're really great in relief, or they're really good to come in and close. And we're starting to see more of that baseball style pitching. I think that it makes it a lot harder for a hitter, not just to scout of, okay, I have to train for and prep for 2 pitchers versus I have to train and prep for 5 because I know I'm going to face all 5 in a weekend and they're all pretty dang good. Not just the prep part, but in game. Okay, I'm getting my rhythm. Oh, I know this next at bat. I got this girl. And then shoot, here comes another one. She's a different look. She's a different speed. She has different eye levels. I got to reset myself and I have to have a new game plan, and it doesn't give me a ton of time to adjust. I've seen that implemented a lot more in the SEC across the country. I think that it's a great way that we're headed for the sport because it I feel like it settles things out a little bit. Hitters kind of got a little bit of an advantage with the data and the scouts that are out, and there wasn't really too much for pitchers. I think this is a way of restoring that balance a little bit more. Um, anything else around the country? Who have you got? Who do you want to see? What are you excited for? Make sure to leave them comment down below. And as always, like and subscribe to this podcast, Diamond in the South, or to any of the Softball America podcast networks. I'm your host, Nicole Mendes. I will be watching this highly, highly anticipated matchup. After watching Teagan Kavan in her interview with us, how could you not either? This is going to be the highlight of my weekend. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch up with you next week.